Margaret Hayes stood in the powder room of the Riverside Inn, her hands trembling as she adjusted her pearl necklace. At 72 years old, she had weathered many storms, but nothing had prepared her for what happened 30 minutes ago. The wedding had been beautiful. Her son Daniel, her pride and joy, looked so handsome in his navy suit. His bride, Sophia, was radiant in ivory lace. Margaret had raised Daniel alone after his father passed when the boy was only 6. She had worked 2 jobs, sacrificed everything, to give him a good life. And now, watching him marry, her heart should have been full. But Sophia had other plans. 2 hours before the ceremony, Sophia had cornered Margaret in the bridal suite. Her smile was sharp, her voice cold. "I need your house keys, Margaret." Margaret had blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, dear, your house keys. Daniel and I will be moving in with you. We need the space, and frankly, you're getting old. You'll need help soon anyway." The words had landed like stones. Margaret had purchased her small Victorian home 40 years ago with her late husband. Every room held memories: the garden where Daniel had learned to ride his bike, the kitchen where she had baked his birthday cakes, the reading nook where she spent quiet evenings. "Sophia, that's my home." Daniel never mentioned it. "Daniel does what I tell him to do." Sophia's eyes had narrowed. "Now, the keys, or I'll make sure this wedding is very uncomfortable for you." Margaret's voice had been steady, though her heart raced. "No, Sophia, that's my answer." Number. The slap came so fast that Margaret barely registered the movement. The sting spread across her cheek, hot and humiliating. Sophia had leaned in close, her breath sharp with champagne. "You'll regret this, old woman." Now, standing in the powder room, Margaret stared at her reflection. A red mark bloomed on her brown skin. She was shaking, but not from fear. From something else, something ancient and patient. She pulled out her phone and made the call. "Thomas, it's Margaret. I need you at the Riverside Inn now." Thomas Mitchell had been Margaret's friend for 50 years. They had met in college, both studying architecture. He had become a successful attorney while she had worked as a school administrator. They had remained close through marriages, children, and loss. When Thomas arrived, Margaret explained everything in the quiet alcove near the kitchen. He listened, his distinguished features growing stern. "I'll handle this," he said simply. The reception was in full swing when Thomas made his entrance. He was 75, tall and commanding in his charcoal suit. He walked directly to the head table where Daniel and Sophia sat, and the room gradually fell silent. "Excuse me, everyone," Thomas said, his voice carrying easily across the hall. "I apologize for the interruption, but there's a matter that requires immediate attention." Danielle stood, confused. "Mr. Mitchell, what's going on?" Thomas turned to Sophia. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm Thomas Mitchell, attorney at law. I represent Margaret Hayes. I understand you made certain demands of my client earlier today, demands accompanied by physical assault." The room went completely still. Sophia's face drained of color. "Yeah, broken bar, I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Really?" Thomas pulled out his phone. "Because 3 guests saw the interaction and have provided statements. Mrs. Hayes also has photographic evidence of the injury, assault and battery, elder abuse. These are serious charges." Daniel's head whipped toward his new wife. "Sophia, what is he talking about?" Margaret stepped forward from where she had been standing near the entrance. The room parted for her. She walked with quiet dignity, her head high despite the visible mark on her face. "Daniel," she said gently, "I need to talk to you alone." They stepped into the garden, mother and son, while the reception buzzed with confusion. Margaret told him everything. She watched her son's face crumble, watched the realization dawn. "Mom, yeah, broken bar, I didn't know she would broken bar. I never asked you to give up your house. I never broken bar." He was crying now. "I'm so sorry." Margaret took his hands. "Daniel, listen to me. I have loved you since the moment you were born. I would do anything for you. But I will not be abused. Not in my own home, and not by someone who claims to love my son but treats his mother this way. I'll fix this," Daniel said. "I promise." Inside, Sophia was arguing with Thomas, her voice rising. "This is ridiculous. It's my wedding day. You can't just Actually, I can," Thomas said calmly. "Mrs. Hayes has chosen not to press charges at this time, but that courtesy comes with conditions. Daniel and Margaret returned. Daniel's face was transformed, no longer the happy groom but a man who had just seen the truth. "Sophia," he said quietly, "we need to talk." What happened next unfolded over the following weeks. The marriage was annulled. Daniel moved back in with Margaret temporarily, heartbroken but grateful for the truth. Through mutual friends, they learned that Sophia had done this before, to her previous boyfriend's widowed father, successfully pressuring him into signing over his property. 6 months later, Margaret sat in her garden with Thomas, drinking lemonade in the late afternoon sun. Daniel had found his own apartment and was healing, slowly learning to trust again. "You know," Thomas said, "you could have pressed charges." "She deserved it." Margaret smiled, a wise, worried smile. "I didn't do this for revenge, Thomas. I did it for my son. To show him that love doesn't demand everything from you. That kindness doesn't mean being a doormat. That standing up for yourself is an act of love, not cruelty." Thomas nodded. "You taught him well." "I hope so," Margaret said softly. "I hope so." The evening settled around them, warm and golden. Somewhere in the house, Margaret's keys hung on their hook by the door, right where they belonged. Safe, secure home. And Margaret Hayes, who had weathered every storm life had thrown at her, sat peacefully in her garden, surrounded by the memories of a life well lived and the quiet triumph of dignity preserved. Some victories, she had learned, are not won through revenge but through the simple, powerful act of saying no. A